Peg?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Peg Stephan. I'm the Education Coordinator for Education at the NOAA's National Ocean Service branch, and we are based in Silver Spring, Maryland. And today I'll give you a little bit of an overview about all the climate resources that we have for educators. Back to Joshua.
Looks like Joshua might be having a problem connecting with his sound, but hopefully he'll be able to fix that in just a few minutes. He is a Science Educator Fellow, an Albert Einstein Distinguished Fellow from the Department of Education, and working in the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. And he has a lot to share with us this evening. For those of you who are new to Blackboard or maybe not have not participated in a webinar using the Blackboard Collaborate platform, just a few things to point out to you that we'll be utilizing this evening. The most important piece for you is probably box 5, and that's the chat area. In that area, that's where you can ask us questions. You can answer. Each of us has a series of questions we're going to be asking, so you can answer those in that box, or you can use the polling feature, which I'll discuss in a moment. And then box 10, of course, is where you're viewing the whiteboard presentation. And then box 4, I want you to pay attention to the 4 squares above the word where it says main room. You'll see the emoticon symbol. Then you'll see a step away sign, which is the person with the clock. The hand raise sign, and then you'll notice that you have a square with a check mark in it, and that's the polling feature. Right now it's set for yes or no, but if you'll notice in just a second, I'm going to change that to multiple choice, and now you have an A through E response that you can choose from. There are no other pieces to tools that you need to know for this particular webinar, so we're going to move on. Which best describes you? Now it's time for you to use this polling feature. If you'll go ahead and choose now, I'll publish those results in just a moment. Okay, great. It looks like we have a good mix of folks joining us tonight. Most of us look like we have a lot of teachers, some informal educators, community leaders, or representatives of other organizations. So again, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and let's look at our agenda. We'll start with a brief recap of Climate Change Live. And then we'll start with Joshua, who's going to talk to us about the Department of Energy's resources for climate change. Then we'll hear from Sandra, who's going to talk about NEON's Project BudBurst. Next, we'll talk with Peg from NOAA, who's going to talk about their climate resources. And then I will speak to EcoSchools USA and the resources that we provide specifically related to climate change. Then we'll have a quick wrap-up. We'll show you where you can register for different events that are going to continue to occur throughout the rest of this year and into 2014, along with an evaluation and a place where you can contact each of us if you come up with some questions after we're finished. And with that, Joshua, I think I'm going to hand you the controls after I do the refresher, so sorry. All of the information related to Climate Change Live or BATS Live, any of the live programs that have been created by the Forest Service are housed at the fsnnaturelive.org. So if you're looking to connect your students with not only Climate Change Live resources, there are also resources related to the wetlands, to BATS, and many other wonderful programs that have been created over the years. The main focus of Climate Change Live is getting our students engaged in the topic of climate change. And we all know that the topic of climate change can be doom and gloom, and we don't want to do that to our kids. We want to get them excited and engaged in this topic to let them know that they can make a difference. And every little piece, every little thing that they do does make a difference and does have an impact. So there are 25 partners that are helping to create Climate Change Live and bring it to teachers and students across the nation. We have teacher webinars, which of course we're participating in this evening. There will be 2 webcasts in March, which we'll talk about a little bit towards the end. And then there's a grant program for action projects that your students participate in. And that will be the topic of our last webinar, I believe, in February. And this is a flyer for the Climate Change Live program. So a place for you to register for the overall program to participate in the webcasts that are in March. There's ways for your class to help. There's information on how kids are making a difference. And then social media is a huge piece of the Climate Change Live project. You can follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, and using your mobile device, you can scan that QR code to see where it takes you. The objectives of this distance learning program are here listed. I'm not going to read those to you. Allow you just a minute to scan over that. But know that it's important for us to educate our students about the positive impact that they can make on climate today and as they grow older and when they become adults. And it's important to, we really want to dismiss those misconceptions. A lot of our students come to us, and even adults come to the classroom with misconceptions about climate change. It is, there are many facts that are strong and held tight, and that's the information that we need to be conveying to our students. Now with that, I hand it over to Joshua.
So thank you very much. I'm very excited to have this opportunity to present some information to everyone. My name is Joshua Snyderman. I'm an Albert Einstein Fellow for this school year. Just want to put a plug in for the fellowship. The applications are still open until December 5th. Really amazing program. I'm placed at the Department of Energy, whose mission is to ensure America's security and prosperity by addressing energy, environmental, and nuclear challenges. And I work in the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, which is at the center of creating a clean energy economy. And it really leads the Department of Energy's efforts to develop and deliver market-driven solutions for energy-saving homes, buildings, manufacturing, sustainable transportation, and renewable electricity generation. So tonight, when we're talking about climate change, part of that is to really understand energy, and the two are incredibly interlinked. And so I wanted to share a couple resources. There's many out there, but as a 10-year middle school science teacher, when I found these resources, I said to myself, now I have one of the main building blocks that I need to educate about energy and climate change. So my first resource that I want to share with you is EIA. EIA, otherwise known as the Energy Information Administration. It's a really interesting governmental entity in that EIA collects, analyzes, disseminates independently and impartially energy information, promoting sound policymaking. So they don't have any oversight in the information that they provide. It's completely independent of approval by other officers or employees of the U.S. government. This is just one example of the beautiful, colorful, and intriguing slides you can find on the EIA website. And also, it always comes with the background information, but I really just enjoy this slide, and I know a lot of people, once they see it, enjoy using it. For example, here we have nuclear electric power, which is 8% of the total mix of energy in the United States generated from source, but it is 100% the lines on the left, percent of source, 100% of nuclear electric power goes to generating electricity. Interesting, that's only 21% of total electric of the total electric power that's used. So this helps us understand the differences. For example, petroleum, which is 36% of the source energy, 71% of that goes into transportation. So 71% of all petroleum is used in transportation, but that's 93% of transportation uses petroleum. So this is just a really interesting graphic that you can use to help educate on where our electricity is using, or energy is being used and how it's being consumed. And again, you can see that the renewable energy in the United States is about 9% of the total source energy created. 54% of that is going to electrical power, and the next major number, 25%, goes to industrial uses. So this is one of the interesting graphics you can find on the EIA.gov. Here are a couple other interesting graphics that I find very useful in middle school and really at higher levels as well. So you can see these are all coming off of the EIA website, but when you look at them, it just gives you a wealth of information, and so I think they speak for themselves. I'm not going to go into explaining each graph, but I wanted you to see the quality of images you can get, and really the detail behind them, going to the Energy Information Administration.gov. You can see Texas. I always find this interesting, how much more energy Texas uses than every other state. And this is for 2010, but that trend continues today. And of course, when we're talking about climate change, we're really looking up here in this first graph in terms of the amount of emissions in billions of metric tons, and then the concentration in the atmosphere in parts per million. Moving on. So the next resource I want to tell you about is, and I really just love the NREL, it's called NREL, is the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. And this is just a screenshot of one of their tools, but each of these tabs down here are interactive. And you can see there's a play button down right here. And the play button plays out a scenario from 2010 to 2050 of where our energy is going to come from in the next 50 years. From this looks like it's a screenshot of 2010, and you can see most of the energy is coming from fossil and nuclear. If you played the image out to 2050, you would see the bubbles for photovoltaics increasing tremendously, for hydropower, and the graph is really illustrative of a future in renewables. And that's part of that positive story that's important to share with kids when we're talking about climate change. Middle schoolers in particular don't want to hear just negatives. They would much rather focus on the positives. And so talking about renewable energy, stuff that's going on at the Department of Energy and the Office of Renewable Energy, or showing graphs like this from NREL, are really great. So here's a couple more images that you can get off of NREL. So NREL is really specifically focused to the renewable energies, where EIA is focused on all of energy use in the country. But you know, you can get different graphs about the photovoltaic. This first graph is showing you the kilowatt hours per meter squared per day, so that your potential of energy from photovoltaics is clearly highest in these darker areas. But you have plenty of sunlight in many areas in the country to create energy. And this one I really think is interesting, this bottom one. The top 600 U.S. non-powered dams with potential capacity greater than 1 megawatt. And so, again, you can see along the Mississippi here, there's lots of dams and resources that can be utilized, and we can encourage our students, especially with STEM and engineering and the whole push for renewables. There's a lot of areas where people can get involved. So I think NREL, again, for educators, middle school and definitely higher and lower, but as a middle school teacher, I find these images extremely compelling for my students. The tool I'm going to talk about most tonight, and I think this is really for a high school teacher, so I'm going to stop right now, and I don't know if you're a high school teacher, if you could click raise your hand, for the teachers in the room. And if you're, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, we've got a 5, we've got a bunch of high school teachers, and you can unraise your hand now. And if you're not a high school teacher, maybe you want to share this with your friends or who are in high school or other levels. But this is the BITES tool, known as Buildings, Industry, Transportation, and Electric Scenarios. Super cool. It was originally created to help people explore and analyze how changes in energy demand and supply in different sectors could impact our carbon dioxide emissions. And so again, looking at the positive future here, BITES really gives us a tool for making adjustments and seeing how it affects our carbon impact. So the thing I love about the BITES tool, and I'm going to show you it in a second, is that it really overlaps great with Common Core standards and next generation science standards, in that it gives you a lot of ability to talk about material in an interdisciplinary way. It also is incredible for discussing graphing skills, for looking at interpretation of data, and for really experimenting with data in a semi-controlled environment where you're controlling the variables yourself. So you could really look at independent and dependent variables through this tool. There is a sample curriculum that's already been piloted and developed. It's right here. I'm not going to read this to you, but it goes through a 3-class of curriculum for introducing this. And when you sign up on their website, which is right here, you then have access to the curriculum that's been created, and you can pilot it yourself. Also, here's the email for Austin, who helped me with this presentation, and he really is open to offering his assistance. So here's how you begin. You really need to register and then log in if you want to go above just the standard model that they offer you. So once you register, you can use the tools, you log in, and then you get to this website where you can create new scenarios. And as you can see, they already have some scenarios that they've used for you. All of these scenarios are based on the 2011 data for the United States, and I emailed Austin today to check when they're updating that, and then they will update that periodically. So this website will stay very current. It's from the Annual Energy Outlook of 2011. That's where we're getting our base data from. So here what you have your 4 industries: buildings, industry, transportation, and electricity, and these are just toggle switches, and you can move the switches as you choose to look at how the changes in efficiency or changes in different scenarios would affect our carbon output. So our first slide that I'm going to show you is what it looks like if at our current rate without any change. Our projections for 2050, an increase in million metric tons of carbon dioxide, and by industry, transportation, industry, and buildings, right? And but then you can go in and you can make some assumptions and say, well, let's say transportation is going to improve. So let's give light-duty vehicles a miles per gallon of about 60 miles per gallon, and let's improve the efficiency of non-light-duty vehicles 20%, and we can see how that would affect our data. So really, you're challenging students to think positively about the future. We're increasing our efficiency, we're increasing our conservation, we're improving our technologies. There is a brighter future, and what's it going to look like? So then here I also fool with the electricity matrix. So I'm only playing with transportation electricity, but we're assuming that 50% of electricity comes from renewables by 2050. And then we can see our reductions. We've reduced emissions by 2050, 39.5% by increasing our renewables and increasing our efficiency of just our cars. And we didn't even mess with the buildings or other tools in this scenario. So this is our outlook of carbon dioxide emissions by 2050. And you can see we have decreases in all sectors. And then there's also a tool on BITES where you can compare your projection, which is this green line here, to the standard base 2050 projection with no real changes taking place as projected. And so I find this tool to be extremely powerful for helping kids graph, interpret, analyze, and think about carbon dioxide in a way it's hands-on. I mean, they can all log in, they can all play with the tool and really think about their carbon footprint and different industries and the ways that they can be impacted by positive changes in how we manage our use of energy. I have one more slide, which I would be remiss not to talk about. So the main project I work at the Department of Energy is something called energy literacy, which is this document here. You could always email me and I can send you copies if you need them, or you can get the PDF online. But energy literacy is a document that was approved by 13 federal agencies, led by the Department of Energy. Also had multiple educational partners that worked on the project with hundreds of comments and thousands of page views. And it was even used in the creation of the next generation science standards, where energy is one of the cross-cutting concepts. So energy is really starting to take a higher tier in education, where I believe it belongs, especially to address climate change. We have to also have an energy literate society. And what we know currently from research is that many people assess themselves as energy literate and then can't pass basic energy literacy questions. So the tools that I've just presented, this document, as well as other literacy documents that are hosted at the U.S. Global Change research program, provide educators with excellent resources for educating. So that's really what I wanted to talk about, and I wanted to know if there were any questions before we move on to the next presenter, which you could just type into the box. I also have my email on the first slide, and I would also recommend people check out the previous webinar, which was really good and had a lot of resources as well. But it was a pleasure to have this opportunity, and we have 2 questions on the chat. And those questions are, I missed them, I think. Let me see. Are there lessons built into the websites that prompt the kids to move through the scenarios? Does the teacher design that? That's a good question, Maggie. There is a lesson plan that you can follow, but no, it's really open-ended. And I think with students, depending on the grade level, you would say control one variable, and then you have your controls, your independent variable, and then you could say what's the dependent variable. And you could have different groups of kids. Say one group could do industry, one group could do transportation, one group could do mix. And I mean, there's really an endless ability to manipulate that tool, but I'm not sure that there's any real particular specific. Are all these websites on climatechangelive.org? They are now, because this webcast will be hosted on that website, and so you can always come back and watch and see it here. And I believe I've answered those questions. So now I'm going to pass to our next presenter. And feel free to always email me at the Department of Energy. Otherwise, have a great night.
Thanks, Josh. I've been looking forward to this webinar. I'm Sandra Henderson. When we developed Project BudBurst in 2007, teachers and their students were a key audience and remain so today. So I was absolutely delighted when I was asked to participate. I'm out here in Boulder, Colorado at NEON, and I'm guessing some of you have probably never heard of the National Ecological Observatory Network, or NEON. We're new. We're very new. We're also the first of its kind in collecting large-scale data, huge big data sets in the ecological world. Now, that's certainly very common in the ocean world, the ocean observatory systems, when you think of astronomers with their, the observatories that look into space. But until now, we have not had a single looking at the country through the same lenses, using the same protocols. The map you see here divides the country into approximately 20 ecoclimatic zones. And at each of those, we have about 124 sites within those. They will each have a big tower. You can see a prototype there on the right. And that will be filled with sensors, and of course automated sensors. And then of course we have field technicians that go out as well. We will be collecting data and providing ecological data so we can better understand climate change, land use change, and invasive species. The data is going to be, we're looking at atmospheric data, soil data, aquatic data, ecology and biology data. So we're going to monitor a range of plants, animals, invertebrates, microorganisms that are indicators of change. We're in our construction phase right now. So in 2017, we will be fully operational and the data will be freely accessible to all. This is going to be a 30-year project. So the people, your students today, particularly some of those that are go on to university, go to college, they're going to take ecology courses, they're going to take biology courses. It's going to be a matter of just, of course they have access to continental scale data for their own education, and then also those who may go on to graduate school. So we're really building this observatory for the next generation of scientists in many ways, and it's very exciting to be in on the ground floor. NEON, of course, we do have an education and public engagement department, and that's where I work. We're going to be developing a variety of educational resources to further ecological understanding. And that'll take the form of educational materials for K-12, for universities, internships, professional development opportunities. But what we're doing right now, our focus on most of our outreach is on citizen science. So I was hoping we could either do it with the hands up. Jennifer probably knows best how to do this. But how many of you have participated or in a citizen science project or activity, or perhaps your students have participated? I guess just raise your hand. That would be super. And oh, great! Wow. This is super. Boy, those little bells are dinging. I don't know if this is possible. Yes, of course it is. You can use the chat feature. So if you answered yes, could you, just which projects you or your students have participated in? Just, oh my gosh. Well, I'm delighted to see Project BudBurst is listed there. Zooniverse, yes, some of those as well. Globe, the bird counting, yeah, the Great Worldwide Bird Count, Great Backyard Bird Count, the Chesapeake Bay Plant Analysis, Monarch Watch, yes. Oh, this is really, I'm delighted to see that you're so knowledgeable in the field, in the area of citizen science. And this next slide, I wanted to make the point, and I know you guys have just made it for me, that there's a proliferation of citizen science projects right now. Part of that is internet and social media make participation very easy. There's another part of it that Jennifer touched upon in her talk a few minutes ago when she talked about, certainly in climate change, there is a lot of gloom and doom that we hear about. And when you're dealing with students, particularly youngsters, there has to be a sense of contributing to a better understanding and actually empowering those individuals. One of the strengths I see of citizen science is that it does empower individuals to make a difference, to have a voice, to be contributing to a better understanding of their environment, and citizen science allows that. Just a few projects, and some you have mentioned the Monarch projects, Project Feeder Watch out of Cornell Lab, or the Urban Birds Program. CocoRa's, they are here in Colorado. They're a national program. They measure one thing only, and that is precipitation in all its forms. So rain, hail, snow, that's what they're looking at. If you're interested in worms, you live in the Great Lake region, you can contribute to a better understanding of what the worms are up to. Galaxy Zoo, someone mentioned Zooniverse, that's one of their very successful operations. The Great Sunflower Project is another really fun program linking plants and pollinators to get a better sense of what's happening. We have found that citizen science, and clearly some of you have too, they're very well suited to both formal and informal education settings. The other thing, in addition to students and teachers and educators, we have found that citizen science projects involve people from all walks of life at all ages. So we might have, fifth graders participating, but we also have retired postal workers. So it really brings people together, and that's an exciting part of the projects as well. Of course, I just showed you a number of different citizen science projects, and allow me to spend most of the time here, the remaining time, is talking about my very favorite citizen science project, and that's NEON's Project BudBurst. But before we do that, let's use the chat feature again. Help me out here. This photo was taken at a cemetery in Massachusetts. If you look down here in the red, whoops, now I'm circling black around them. Sorry about that. These photos were taken the same date, May 30th. One was taken in 1868. The other was taken in 2005, so about 140 years apart. Could you tell me some of the similarities and differences you find in these two photographs taken from the same perspective, about 140 years apart? Just take a moment or so and put it in the chat, please. Looks snowy on the left, both in May. Oops, I'm not able to keep, you guys are going faster. Paved the road in 2005. Yep, you're right, there is a paved road there, and there wasn't. Trees haven't leafed out in the older one. Very important. Yeah, pine tree, certainly some of the actual composition of the cemetery, which plants are still alive. Warmer in 2005, Janelle is asking. And I'm going to go ahead and, I think Janelle's asking a question, a very good question when looking at these two photographs. When you look at the older photograph, the one in 1868, the one on our left, I mean, that does look, somebody has said it looked cold and snowy. Absolutely, that looks like a cold winter scene to me. The deciduous trees are, they're still in dormancy. Even if you look at the people in those photographs, they're heavy clothing they're wearing. You can see some of the women wearing capes and heavier clothing. That, to me, if I were just looking at that photograph, it conjures up the feeling of winter. I mean, I really think that's a late, I would say, if you just showed me that picture without a date on it, I would say we were looking at a photograph in winter. Contrast that with the one on the other side, with all the trees that are bloomed out. The deciduous trees are in bloom, and I would look at that and say, oh my gosh, that's late spring, early summer, because these are not only just leafing out, these are in full leaf. And so this is, I like to use this, it's a very powerful, very powerful way to kind of show differences, but I have to make a cautionary statement here. This is kind of a dramatic photograph to show, but I would never suggest using these two photographs alone and suggesting, wow, now we know the climate has changed. These are both snapshots. Now, the scientists who have done some of this work have used thousands of photographs to try and get that proxy data, but I just wouldn't want to mislead anybody into thinking, boy, now we can say climate change. But I think it does give us a very good sense of how plants really do respond to changes in their environment. We know that plants respond to precipitation, changes when the April flowers or April showers bring May flowers and such. We know that when there's adequate moisture, plants will start growing. Same thing with temperature. We know when the temperatures are warm enough, there's enough growing degree days, plants will start their growing cycle. Day length, their photoperiod, is another thing that influences plants. From a citizen science perspective, and of course I'm biased, I think that plants are a wonderful thing to introduce students to start making simple observations, because plants are found everywhere people are, and they're also relatively stationary. So what I mean by that is you can go out and make repeat visits. Your students could look at the same oak tree in your schoolyard week after week after week, and unlike some of the birds, the oak tree will still be there most likely. So I've been kind of alluding to this idea of phenology, and I know some of you are probably very familiar with what phenology is. In short, it's the science that measures the timing of life cycle events, phenophases, for all organisms. So birds, migration is certainly a phenophase, as is when we look at that ponderosa pine with the pollen just ready to be released, or the waterfowl down there in the lower left. That is nesting, certainly reproduction, and of course the little leaf, the apple tree that's just leafing out now, that's a phenophase in plants. Although we'll mention animals once in a while, for the most part we will be focusing on plant phenology. And we do hear a lot about phenology right now. As I said, I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. In fact, let's take a quick poll. Before I started talking a few minutes ago, how many of you had heard of phenology before? Yeah, quite a few. It may not be a household word right now, but phenology is not new, even though we are seeing, and just your responses are very warming to see how many of you are familiar with phenology. But I want to just give you a very, very brief history of plant phenology, and it's getting a lot of attention right now. I mean, 900 AD, the first written records of the timing of the cherry blossoms were made in Japan, and that information is still available to scientists today. In Northern Europe and Switzerland, the grape harvest dates have been recorded since 1480 AD, and you can imagine for those involved in agriculture, having a sense of when the plants are going to start growing is very important to livelihoods. More recently, Henry David Thoreau in Walden and then Aldo Leopold in Madison, Wisconsin, they both kept extensive phenological records of what they saw, and these are being used today. In fact, Henry David Thoreau, when he spent his time in Walden, recorded the first flowering and first leafing of over 500 different plant species and recorded the dates. Scientists today at Boston University are using Henry David's work and comparing it for plants that still exist in that area. When are they blooming and flowering today? And it's kind of proxy data. And finally, the satellite world, due to a resurgence of interest in phenology, due to climate change and new tools that are available, we're able to compare ground observations and remotely sensed observations. So it's been very exciting. And you know, we've based Project BudBurst on the premise that every plant has a story to tell, and the recognition that citizen scientists, individuals who just have an interest, can play a very important role in sharing these stories. Project BudBurst, we started to come up with a convoluted mission statement, but it was too hard for me to remember. So we kind of like to play with haikus throughout the website, because we also want to encourage you know, students and other individuals to submit these to us. We use them instead of our plant of the week. We have the plant haiku of the week. But our mission statement in the form of a haiku: people watching plants, contributing to research, join Project BudBurst. As I said, we're a national field campaign designed to engage students and others in collecting data and observing phenological events. Once again, in plants, in the spring we're looking at phenomena like the first leafing and first flowers. But don't let our name fool you. We are interested in what the plants are doing all year long. We want your students to tell us when they see that first ripe fruit or leaves start to change color. We think that participating in Project BudBurst can help your students gain experience with scientific practices. This is an authentic research project, and you know, they are going to make observations. They're going to record and exchange their submit their observations, working with data. One of the things I find exciting is when you're having your students learn how to work with data, and they're using the Project BudBurst data, which is freely downloadable to all. They've also contributed to that data set, so it may pique their interest a little bit more, because they can drill down and see how their contributions are being used by others. And finally, seeing science come to life. That's part of one of the things I get excited about with programs such as this one. And going back again, I want to mention that empowerment that Jennifer started off early with. I think that's very important as well. So how do we participate? We have it very straightforward, easy to use protocols, 2 ways to participate: regular reports, if you have the option to have your students make reports throughout a season, throughout the year. Maybe you have classes that can go from year to year. That's even better. But the other thing that's very useful are single reports. You may only be talking about plants with your students for a very short time period. You may be in an informal education setting where you have students coming to you for an afternoon. In that case, you can just use our single reports. You give it one shot: what is that plant doing today? Both of these are very useful for scientists. One of the big questions we get in Project BudBurst is, how do I select a plant? We have our 10 most wanted. Of course, this is all on our website, budburst.org, that we encourage. If you don't know where to start, this might help. We have, you can select plants from a master list. We have about 250 plants on the BudBurst list right now. You can go by your state. You can click on your state and see which of the BudBurst species are there. But you know what? If you can't find a plant on those lists, that's okay. We are quite happy to have you choose, your students choose others. When we developed Project BudBurst, we did not want to exclude anyone based on what plants were available to them. So we will take observations on any plant that's convenient to you or your students. Our report forms are very easy to use. Once again, freely downloadable on the BudBurst website, budburst.org. And the scientists we are getting scientific use. We've only been around for a few years, but some of our data has been used to help validate models, or in other cases, used to extend historical records. So if, for example, the comparison of earliest flower here, there were a couple of fanatical phenologists, Swink and Wilhelm in Cook County, Illinois, and they looked at first flower for 50 years. And so we have a very, very rich data source from them. We've been able to compare the Project BudBurst data in Cook County and see the differences of the earlier timing. And we are finding some species are blooming significantly earlier. We also have a partnership with the National Geographic FieldScope program, and you can view the BudBurst data with your students on their site, the budburst.fieldscope.org. But you can also view, sort, and download your own reported data using the My BudBurst Data Viewer, which is on the BudBurst website, and we do have live maps. So when you put your observation in, your students can immediately get that feedback of drilling down and seeing what their data is doing. This is I grabbed a screenshot yesterday of our front page. We have a number of things, the recent reports, so when you or your students make your reports, that goes up there right away. You can see here we have our haikus again, our plant haiku of the week. But what I'd like to do is circle two things. One, go to sign up for our newsletter, please, and we'll keep you apprised of anything coming up. We do have a lot of resources for educators, and if you go up here to our education section, you'll find things such as our Quick Start Guide. We have those in 3 grade bands, K4, 5-8, 9-12, and different activities that help educators implement in their classrooms. We developed a classroom registration so that teachers in formal settings particularly can manage their students' accounts, so that, and that's all on the website. All of our activities are aligned with national standards, and we do have a suite of classroom activities as well. So I encourage you to look at those resources. This is something that when we say we're a K-12 program, if you do go to the BudBurst site, you're going to really see that it's written not for little kids. So to be truly a K-12 program, a few years ago we created the BudBurst Buddies. This is for the, say, K through 3 crowd. And those little guys there, this is, let me introduce you to Sage. And I'll introduce you to Lily. They're good friends, and they want to know and learn more about the stories that plants can tell. And this is an online resource where there's a little story that you can flip through, and there's journal pages. They can certainly participate. They can report what they see, and then if they make 4 simple observations, and their observations are not going into the big BudBurst database, these are very simple. If they make 4 observations, they get an auto-generated certificate proclaiming that they are BudBurst buddies, just like their new friends Lily and Sage. Finally, I want to share this with you. Coming soon to a browser near you, we have online courses for educators, and we're in the process. This is a screenshot. This is just coming out. It will be live on January. The Neon Citizen Science Academy. We have some online courses. We're expanding those. We'll have 5 courses available. The new website and course offerings, come back early January. Check out citizenscienceacademy.org. Oh boy, I'm not very good at drawing these, am I? But you get the picture. And if you sign up for our newsletter, you'll hear about this routinely. Quick overview about our courses for educators. They're all completely online. The courses are 30 days in length and generally take 10 to 30 hours to complete. Time varies with the course you select or your pace in completing the materials. The courses are semi-facilitated, and we do provide optional graduate level continuing education credits through the Colorado School of Mines. So I'd like to thank everybody for giving me this opportunity. I'd like to thank all of you, but mostly I really want to thank those little tiny white things you see here are the names of our 16,568 contributors since November 14th, when I put the slide set together the other day, and they're who I really want to thank for making this whole project possible. It's because of them that Project BudBurst is sharing the stories that plants can tell and making a difference. Thank you.
So Sandra, you had some questions in the chat. Let me go back up. Let's see. Here it is. How do we know, this is going back to your two pictures, your comparison pictures at the beginning.
Oh.
How do you know that the date on the left is the correct date?
Well, that's a very good question. Would I stake my reputation and life on it? Absolutely not. But the reviewers from Boston University, Richard Premack and his then graduate student, Abe Miller-Rushing, are the two who have done extensive research in this area. They provided me with those photographs, so I have a relatively high confidence that they are accurate. They're impeccable researchers, and Richard is internationally known in his work in plant phenology. So I guess part of it is the source. The people who gave them to me to use in these type of situations are very credible individuals. Does that answer your question? I'm not trying to convince you.
Thank you. And then this one has two parts. Has anyone been tracking maple trees in the Northeast in Project BudBurst?
Oh my gosh.
And then is there historical data students can access and then contribute to?
Okay, the first question is maples, of course, in the Northeast. The same person I just mentioned, Dr. Richard Premack, internationally renowned plant phenologist, is in Boston, and he has a project out there. It's called NELOP, New England Leaf On Project. And he's one of our partners. We work with Richard and his graduate students. And he is very interested in 10 species in New England, and I'm sure the person who asked that question would probably recognize all of them. But certainly red maple and I believe sugar maple are two of those 10 species. So we do have a campaign specific to New England looking at the maples. And I encourage you again, sign up for our newsletter. You'll get all, you go back to the budburst.org. There's a community newsletter in the upper right. There's a button you can click and sign up, and you'll get all that information. If you're in New England and you're looking at maples, we'd love to have you join the NELOP project. And the second part of that was, is there historical data sets? Yes, there are. Are they easy to find online and in great digital format? No. Most of them are written out. The one we had in Cook County, we just had great fortune in working with the Director of Plant Sciences from the Chicago Botanic Garden, and she was well aware of that historical set, and she was able to do that. It's something we'd love to do down the road. We don't have the capacity right now, but my understanding is the National Phenology Network, usampn.org, I believe, is also trying to find a way, and they may have more of those historical data sets that your students could then make their observations and compare, which I think would be very powerful and a great learning experience.
Definitely. Hey Sandra, will you write the name in the chat box of the researcher that you were talking about and then his maple leaf project?
Sure.
Thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and move on and let Peg get started.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm going to give you just a taste of NOAA's climate resources, and I'll go through these fairly quickly, but we'll make sure that these websites are available to you later on so you can access them. Of course, NOAA's roots date back to 1807. We were the nation's first scientific agency, and we started with the Survey of the Coast that was established by Thomas Jefferson. And since then, we've expanded our role a bit to include a little more than just surveying the ocean's bottoms and ports. So we're responsible for your daily weather forecasts, your severe storm warnings. We do the climate monitoring. We manage fisheries, coastal restoration, and we support marine commerce in addition to supporting the monitoring and regulations of marine mammals and some special places, as I will show you in just a minute. We also offer a lot to educators. This is a list of some of the programs and things that we do have online. I will show you some of those today. I especially want to make note of the Earth Labs. That was a NASA and NOAA funded project to model Earth and environmental science courses as lab sciences. And so they support state and national guidelines, of course, but there's 8 modules in there for things, for example, climate in the cryosphere, climate in the biosphere, climate in the carbon cycle, and drought. And so those are some specific modules you might go into that site and take a look at. We were part of the group of partners that worked with many agencies and organizations to develop the ocean literacy and climate literacy principles. We have also a number of installations of Science on a Sphere. You see that in the upper right-hand corner. And that network, it grows every year. Primarily they're in museums, science centers, and visitor centers in special places. And so it's a way to display data sets of NASA and NOAA onto a 3D projection and then do programming with that. So the education.noaa.gov has a set of collections that pull from resources across many of NOAA's websites and program offices, and it's designed to assist educators in getting these from one centralized interface. So I said it's just a sampling. They've chosen some topics and they have a collection for each topic and about 24 resources for those, so they're somewhat selected for you, but you can also do a search if you like. All of the linked resources are organized to show you a variety of educational settings. There are lesson plans, visuals, videos, and links to other resources as well. They're not grade specific, but you can find grade bands within these collections, which is sometimes very helpful for teachers. And there are things along the top. You'll see oceans and coasts, climate, weather and atmosphere, marine life, freshwater, and special topics like corals and ocean acidification. So the website that I'm responsible for is this oceanservice.noaa.gov/education website, and on this we have a number of products that cover the breadth of scientific research and activities that is conducted by the National Ocean Service. And our primary areas of responsibility include the oceans, the coasts, charting, and navigation. So this site includes student activities, multiple grade levels, that you see there in the middle of that screenshot, mysteries, which are more for upper elementary. The tutorials and case studies are more for middle and high school. But we also have a lesson plan library and some professional development opportunities for teachers. And if you will look at the circle thing, it says for teachers, professional development. And if you go to the next one, you'll see we have 2 there that are offered as to assist teachers in utilizing the wealth of online resources. One is called the Ocean's Role in Weather and Climate. The other one is Climate, and we also have Living in the Weather. So there's a lot of information on here. These were developed with the partnership of the National Science Teachers Association, and they assisted us in finding resources, developing some lesson plans, and then making these resource lists available in topical areas. So if we'll kind of roll in on this ocean's role in weather and climate on the next slide, and you'll see it here that this is the lead page, a little bit of information. There are teacher tutorials, links for teachers and students, and there's also a lesson plan on the Earth's energy budget. The lesson plan includes a vignette of how a teacher actually used this and some samples of student work. And this other elongated red line is an indication of the interactions that we have that are archived here, also developed in partnership with NSDA. And here are just a sample of those. on coral reefs, climate, ocean circulation, and these are things in which the teacher or the student can change the parameters and then see how the model works. And so teachers find this very useful in their classroom lessons. We just published a new informal activity book. It is free. It is downloadable at this website. It is found in PDF form. And the idea is that this book is tied to the essential principles of climate science. There's one activity for each of the essential principles. And the idea is that as going through this book, a student or a parent or an after-school group might be able to explore and understand more about the climate system and the factors that drive it.
Peg?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Natalie had a question.
Sure.
Natalie, do you want to type that in the chat box? And Peg can answer that for you real quick.
Sure. I assume it relates to this.
Well, I'll let you go on and I'll stop you if she has a chance to type that in.
All right, sounds good. NOAA has the responsibility for monitoring 3.5 million square miles of coastal and deep ocean waters, and that includes 95,000 miles of coasts and shoreline ecosystems. So in order to manage and conserve all of that and protect our marine mammals, fish, and coral reefs, we have to have some sort of an observing system, and that is what this integrated ocean observing system does. So it's a vital tool for tracking, predicting, managing, and adapting to changes in our ocean coast. And we also include the Great Lakes in our coastal monitoring. And in order to do this, in addition, we have a fleet of ships that does our hydrographic surveys and also deploys and monitors these floats. So all this data has to go somewhere, and so it goes to the National Oceanographic Data Center. And this is the world's largest collection of freely available oceanographic data. We have water temperatures that date back to the late 1700s, and we measure down thousands of meters deep. We have these available through data online, but also journals and books and photo collections. And if you take a look at this, this lists all the products that are available from the National Oceanographic Data Center, and you'll see down here we have parameters in the lower right-hand corner of temperature, ocean currents, and so on. All of this is data that is usable and available freely online by you or students. I'm seeing if there's a question. No. Okay. The National Data Buoy Center is a network of data collecting buoys and coastal stations. There is a virtual tour that you can get an overview of what it does. The reason they do this is because weather forecasters need frequent high-quality marine observations. And so in order to prepare their own forecasts and to verify their forecasts after they're produced, they rely on the information that comes from these buoys in addition to satellite data. So this system of buoys provides hourly observations from about 90 buoys and 60 coastal stations. And all the stations measure wind speed, direction, barometric pressure, air temperature, and so on. And some of them also measure sea surface temperature, wave height, and period. And a few of them will also measure conductivity, which is salinity and water current speeds. So this material is, again, freely available. Everything that NOAA has is public domain. Our ocean acidification, we have an extensive number of people that are working on this. Ocean chemistry is very important, of course, to sea life, but we're also very interested in what's happening with climate change and oceans, and acidification is one of those one of those things that we're very interested in maintaining our data. I see a question that's speaking of buoys. These, as far as I know, the buoys are monitored by NOAA, but the data is available to other nations. I can double check on that, but that's what I understand right now. There's 3 sites for ocean acidification. I will be talking about data in the classroom, which is the one in the lower right-hand corner. The understanding ocean acidification from the sanctuaries, national marine sanctuaries, that has the big turtle on it. They have workshops that you might want to key in on, hands-on activities, and some useful links to other information and demonstrations about ocean acidification. We have a lot of coastal information. Of course, that's one of our big jobs. And so the state of the coast, upper left-hand corner, this is to take a look at the economics and the quality of life for residents. It has case studies and about the complex connections between ecosystems, coastal economies, and the climate. Also, I want to mention there's 5 lesson plans for high schools that use the scientific and socioeconomic information on that site. The digital coast in the upper right-hand corner is the data tools and training and stories from the field. That's more for managers. The NOAA Coast Watch provides a lot of information on environmental information from several different satellite platforms covering all of the United States coastal waters, including Hawaii and Alaska. So these include things like sea surface temperature, making weather predictions, and especially ocean color radiometric data like chlorophyll, so that we can predict when things like harmful algal blooms occur. NOAA Coast is the lower left-hand corner, is an interesting GIS-based web mapping portal, and it includes online real-time coastal environmental observations. And you can go on here and find displays of the latest surface weather, satellite clouds, weather radar reflectivity, sea surface temperature analyses, gridded forecasts, and it includes a lot of geo-referenced hyperlinks to a lot of websites. Our National Estuarine Research Reserve is a system that protects more than 1.3 million coastal and estuarine acres in 28 reserves. They are found in 22 states and Puerto Rico, and we monitor them for long-term research, environmental monitoring, education, and stewardship. These living classrooms offer a lot of programs and a lot of data for students and teachers. And I want to particularly mention the system-wide monitoring. We affectionately call it swamp data. And this is data about those little yellow dots on that U.S. map. And you'll see there the list of parameters that you can capture. And there's a really nice set of lesson plans for elementary and middle school that would use this data and to help students understand the kinds of organisms found in estuaries, the different types of estuaries, and how they've adapted to live in these unique environments where the rivers meet the sea. On to weather.gov. This is probably the most familiar thing that NOAA does is weather forecast. This is where the Weather Channel and every other weather station gets their weather information and their watches and their warnings. We are the sole official voice for the U.S. government for warnings during life-threatening weather situations. So you'll see anytime something comes out for hurricanes, tornadoes, winter storm watches, etc., they all come from NOAA. We also monitor and give warnings for extreme heat, fire threats, tsunamis, floods, solar flares. There are 122 weather forecast officers and 13 river forecast officers, which is something that a lot of people don't know. We also issue marine, aviation, and space alerts and warnings as well. And the weather site's been newly redesigned, and in the lower right-hand corner you'll see that there's a place there that tracks daily, hourly temperatures and other kinds of weather data, and you can actually make a prediction and see how close the students' predictions came to what actually happened. Sandra mentioned this COPA-RAS, the Community Rain, Hail, and Snow Network. I'll just mention it one more time, in that this network is something that requires very inexpensive tools, a hail pad and a 4-inch rain gauge. It's very cheap, and this is something that many ages of students can gather. You can see, if you go to the site, the gray dots all over the United States are people who are monitoring this rain, hail, and snow and then putting it into the system, and it is used by scientists. So let me move on to climate.gov. This is a new site that was launched just fairly in the last year or two. And climate.gov is a source of our authoritative scientific data and information about climate. This is NOAA's site for climate. Our goals are to promote public understanding of climate science and events. We want to make our products and services easy to use. You'll find ways to get to data. You'll find interesting articles on the Climate Watch magazine. And there's a place there, a tab called Education. And I'm going to click, if you click on that Education tab, you will get here. And on this Teaching Climate section, you will find learning activities and curriculum materials, multimedia resources, professional development opportunities like our Climate Live Watch, Climate Change Live series. You'll find some opportunities for formal and informal educators to incorporate climate science into your work. There's a search function in the lower right-hand corner that allows educators to zoom in on topics in specific grade levels, and these resources are pulled from the CLEAN project, which is a climate literacy, energy, and literacy project, and this is a series of over 400 lesson plans that have been very carefully vetted through a network of educators and scientists to check for integrity, both content-wise and pedagogically. And so this is a one way for you to access that network is through the climate.gov portal. The National Climatic Data Center is the world's largest climate data archive. You can see how much data they have. And that red circle on the left-hand side indicates the different kinds of data that is freely available. This has records that go from paleoclimatology to century-old journals to data that's less than an hour old. We are the nation's scorekeeper regarding trends and anomalies of weather and climate, and this data is freely available to everyone so that they can use it for their own purposes. Today, data for this center comes from land-based stations, but also from ships, buoys, weather balloons, radar, satellites, and even modeling. And as part of that site, you can see all these little dots, these dark purple and lavender dots. These are places where we're gathering data. And you can see the parameters there that are some of the ones that you can collect. Any of these locations with these little dots has map themes, and we have also time-related maps to find temperature, snowfall, precip, hourly, daily, monthly, or annually. You can choose the parameter and choose the time period. The paleoclimate data is also on NCDC, and this is derived from natural sources like tree rings, ice cores, corals, and sediments. This extends our data archive back to millions of years, and it includes some geophysical and biological measurements, but also some reconstructed climate variables like temperature and precipitation. So this data has been contributed by scientists from around the world. And again, this site also has some very interesting lesson plans that uses these data sets. So check out the paleoclimate data set. Our friends out in Hawaii have developed this Global Science Investigator. At the beginning, I told you that we have Science on a Sphere, which is a three-dimensional installation in science centers and museums. This little Global Science Investigator is a two-dimensional that can be displayed on a computer screen. And so it takes some of those same data sets from Science on a Sphere, and that globe actually can be manipulated like Google Earth. But you can put on top of it layers of different kinds of data sets that you see across the top. Some of the data sets include things like tsunamis, hurricanes, marine debris, coral reefs, animal migration, aerosols, ocean temperatures, and climate models. And you will find that a lot of these data sets are a little bit focused on the Pacific side of the United States, but you have to give them a little bit of credit because it was developed by folks in Hawaii. Data in the classroom is something that was developed a number of years ago. It continues, as far as I'm concerned, to be one of our premier data usage lesson plans. There are 4 modules here: El Nino, sea level, water quality, and ocean acidification. The top 3 are mostly middle to high school. Ocean acidification is definitely high school. I would suggest high school chemistry because of the level of the science and math that's involved. But all 4 of these use a scaled interaction. So they take students or teachers from a non-understanding level of data, using data and understanding data, up through becoming more skilled with the data as they explore some actual data sets. And then you continue to transfer that knowledge from one project up to another. And so the entry and adoption are very directive and teacher-driven, and they're first steps, but then eventually you get more student-directed, and then you open up eventually to the invention level, which is designing lessons featuring student-driven inquiry. So they're very good to help teachers and students use real data to examine some of the dynamic Earth processes. The Environmental Visualization Lab just published this new website last week, and I'm very excited about it because this will give you access to videos, animations, images, and even interviews of scientists doing work. The scientists that are shown in the lower right-hand corner are ones that have worked on understanding what happened with Hurricane Sandy and some of the other large weather events that have occurred. But you will see all of these things are in the public domain, freely available for reuse. And I hope you'll check them out, and they will make your lessons very dynamic. Finally, I want to give a little bit of a highlight to our Climate Stewards Project, which is one of the cooperating projects with this Climate Change Live. This is a nationwide program. Right now we have representatives in 46 states, including Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. We consist of formal and informal educators from K to 16. We have some citizen scientists. We have people from zoos and aquaria. The idea is to provide a continuing professional development sequence of webinars and book club discussions and opportunities. Some of it is place-based, some of it is regional. We provide stipends for travel and some small grant funding for stewardship projects. The applications are open now until December 13th. We're open to bring in at least 100 people. You need to go to that website and watch a quick webinar, about 30 minutes, and then at the end of the webinar you'll see the application for the link to apply. We are very excited about this Climate Steward project. This would supplement what you're learning with Climate Change Live. It's a very nice melding of efforts, and you will learn new things from the scientists themselves as we try to provide the kind of professional development that educators are looking for. This is a continuing project. This is year number 4. And one of our regional directors, Melanie Lewis, is actually on our phone call tonight. So thank you, Melanie, for attending. And I will take questions. All right, I will pass this over to Jennifer.
Hi, everybody. I am going to, it's, let's see, I'm Central Time at 7:45 here, so it's 8:45 for you on the East Coast. West Coast? East Coast, yes. So I'm going to bypass my presentation tonight, and I'm going to add it to our next educational resources that we do in December, because I know our families are very important. So let me go to our evaluation pieces. Actually, I think I want to back up. Yeah. I want to talk to you and make sure that you get signed up for this two-part webcast. It's going to be very exciting. If you listened to our webinar last month when Cy was with us from the Alliance for Climate Education, you know that you're going to be just gung-ho and excited to participate in these webcasts with your students as ACE presents their wonderful assembly. So that first one is March 5th, and the second one is a week later, March 12th. You can register for these on the climatechangelive.org website. And then we want you to continue to participate in our webinar series. And to register for these, of course, are not archived, but you can register and also see the archives on the National Wildlife Federation site, ecoschoolsusa.org. So be sure to continue. Like I said, next month we're going to talk about another set of educational resources. Project Learning Tree will be with us, U.S. Forest Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and then I'm going to be sure to share EcoSchools with everyone next time. Then after the new year in January, we're going to talk about professional development programs for climate change education. And then last but not least, in February, we'll talk about action grants that are going to be provided to us through PLT's Green Works. So be sure, we're always looking for money to help support the great things our kids do and the initiatives that they want to put in place. So be sure to join us in February. To register your class, if you haven't already, please go to climatechangelive.org and you'll see a big registration button. To help evaluate this webinar, if you take probably 5 or 6 minutes, there's only 5 questions. It's a surveymonkey.com/S and then CCL3. If you missed one or number 2 of the webinars that we've already presented, that is already available at the link that you see at the bottom of this slide. So I'll give you a minute to jot these down. I'll also put them in the chat box once I go. I can do that right now. Yeah, I'll just go on and I'll put that in there in just a moment. So feel free to contact us with any information, any things you'd like to share, any questions that you have regarding engaging maybe the larger school audience or community members or your students. Any one of us can help answer your questions, and if we can't specifically answer a question, we'll be sure to get you to the person who can. Remember, if you have a question about phenology, Sandra Henderson from NEON would be happy to take your questions. Josh Schneiderman from the Department of Energy, talking about their great resources. And then Peg Stephan from NOAA. Please feel free to shout out any questions that you might have for them, or you can email them after or in the days coming if you have any questions. I always think of my questions after a webinar is over. So I've had someone ask if we can go back to the SurveyMonkey web link, so I'm going to go back. I'll leave that up for just a moment. And that is all that we have this evening. So if you don't have any questions and you have the SurveyMonkey link and you know where to register for the next webinar and where to go to register your class for the webcasts in March, then we thank you greatly. Have a wonderful evening, and we look forward to seeing you next month.